This episode is a special encore presentation of Work Trends. Welcome to the Work Trends podcast from Talent Culture. I'm your host, Megan Mbiro. Every week, I interview interesting people who are reimagining work. And be sure to check out our Work Trends Twitter chat events calendar located at talentculture.com on the podcast page. Hello, and welcome to the Talent Culture Work Trends podcast, brought to you by our special guest and sponsor, Verimark. We are so glad that you're listening with us at Talent Culture, the place to find meaningful connections at work. Speaking of talent culture, I'm excited to let everybody know we're getting a brand new website, and that includes a better podcast experience on the new site for all of you wonderful people who visit us and listen to the Work Trends episodes. It's coming soon, so be on the lookout at talentculture.com. I'm your host, Megan Mbiro, and today we're talking about something that is absolutely critical for workplace success: trust. But before we jump into today's podcast, go ahead and ask yourself this question. As a leader, how do you foster trust in your workplace? And make sure you listen all the way through this podcast because there's a great gift coming your way. Let's take a look at some research on the topic of trust in the workplace. A 2022 study by Edelman found that 78% of employees trust their employer. However, trust in leaders has declined in recent years, with only 23% of U.S. employees strongly agreeing that they trust the leadership of their organization. A 2021 study by MIT Sloan Management Review found that employees who trust their employers are 260% more motivated to work, have 41% lower rates of absenteeism, and are 50% less likely to look for another job. A 2020 study by Gallup found that employees who trust their managers are more likely to be engaged at work, have higher job satisfaction, and are more productive. We are all continuing to uncover the many ways that the pandemic has impacted the world of work. This includes trust in the workplace, especially in hybrid work scenarios that have required adjusted thinking for managers. Findings from the Microsoft Work Trend Index show that a gap is there between manager and employee expectations. It also emphasizes that one-on-one conversations create trust and give people the confidence to embrace their version of flexible hybrid work. So let's step back a minute. At the beginning of the pandemic, workplace trust was at an all-time high, which is crazy, right? We were all very confused about what to do next. But organizational crisis communications kicked in, as well as leaders' inherent drive to help and protect their people. We saw regular communication like all staff meetings, Q&A sessions, a true humanization of all people, regardless of their role or position. Gallup research at the time measured a jump in employees who strongly agreed that their supervisor kept them informed from 47% to 54%. It was a reminder that supervisors or managers are the key to helping people feel connected, feel involved. This uptick in communication needs to stay as the new norm, allowing for improved relationships and trust. Here to discuss the topic of workplace trust with me is Verimark CEO Daniel Callahan. Daniel Callahan launched background screening and pre-hire check service Verimark in 2019 in response to witnessing poor levels of screening within the HR landscape. Verimark has been designed to give peace of mind and complete confidence in a hiring company's prospective candidates' credentials. I am so thrilled to have you here today, Daniel. Whether you're an employer or a recruiter who wants to take the employee screening process to the next level, you are in the right place. Welcome, Daniel. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm doing really well. And you are in?
So today I am in Dubai. Verimark has just been exhibiting with the HR Summit and Expo here, where obviously we have a team and a presence and such. But enjoying the Middle East for another 24 hours.
Awesome. Well, listen, let's dive right in. To kick things off, let's lay the foundation. There is an inherent link between workplace trust and having a strong grasp on who is working for your organization. If you think about it, trust takes so many forms. It can be trusting people with sensitive data, trusting them to appropriately represent the company, or as serious as trusting people with your life. That said, we need to make sure we're hiring trustworthy people, which often includes a comprehensive background screening. That said, just running a background check doesn't really tick all the boxes. Let's talk first about what a thorough background screen program should entail. So, Daniel, what are the best ways to implement a successful background screening program?
Great question. We think that background screening or just really credential verification is more than about checking the grades someone got at college, right? It's more than checking if they've worked where they've said they've worked. It's about establishing a level of credibility and a level of integrity that person is yes, a safe workplace colleague, but also appropriate, going to be culturally additive to your organization. So I think first and foremost, it's about, the first part of implementing a successful program is about going it with the right objectives in mind. What's the objective that we're trying to do? And ultimately, we think that Verimark is a real enabler for companies to create safer and more trusted workplaces. Now, as a hiring organization, if you can start off with that more positive mindset, say, about why you want to introduce this extra step into your screening process, then I think obviously it's about making sure that it's appropriate and consistent with the roles and seniorities or industry that you're in. Obviously, as a company, if if it's a very low risk, low access to cash, low access to any vulnerable people or such, working from home in complete isolation or such, then making sure that you don't need to do so many broader checks on that person. However, if you're hiring the CFO in a financial services company, or you're hiring lots of senior financial executives across a financial services company who look after other people's money and such, then obviously you want to make sure that you have a more rigorous program. And that can include obviously going far beyond just the ID, the criminal and the credit type checks, all of which through having a partner like Verimark enables you to have a single point solution for running that program either on a domestic or on a global scale. And we cover 150 plus countries. I think the second key element to having a really successful background screening company is obviously being careful in who you choose as a partner. I do think that it is something as a service that is best done for an outsourced provider, because obviously it saves you as an organization from being exposed to any risk of claims of discrimination or misuse of data or asking the wrong question in the wrong country or the wrong question in the wrong state in America's case. And given how litigious a legal minefield hiring can be in many parts of the world, having a partner that is a subject matter expert that has those inbuilt governance compliance controls into their platform is obviously a really useful way to shortcut or avoid any easy misgivings or accidents around the whole process. And then finally, I think it sort of loops back onto the third post. This is about doing it with care. They want to start in your company. Yes, background screening is a necessary, in many cases, inconvenience for parts of that process to really move forward. Starting a new job is an incredibly stressful time for the candidates, and therefore making sure that process is as easy and as streamlined and as open and transparent for them as possible, so they know that they are exactly where they are in the process and don't have to add to the complexity or stress of this career transition that they're currently undergoing.
Let's geek out for a second on this whole idea that I love from you, the 3 pillars of trust. How do you identify these?
Yeah, so this is, as I said, Verimark is, we say our mission is to help the world trust faster. We want to build dramatically safer and more trusted workplaces. And one of the things that we started to realize is that there is a whole new, obviously, paradigm of work being brought about through post-COVID, virtual or hybrid working. The nature of employment and the nature of workplace relationships is changing, and it's becoming much more transactional. It's becoming much shorter tenures in various places. And a lot of this is because there's now this sort of misgiving between employers, or a cynicism about the true nature of it. We've seen too many people be burned one too many times by companies that disguise themselves as families until they have a bad quarter. What we have been able to identify that through lots of academic research, as well as the publicly available data in workplace surveys or consultancies and professional service firms, is that there are three real pillars to create workplace trust. The first is all about getting the right people on the business, and it's the people that make a company, and therefore you obviously have the right people in the team. You think about books like Good to Great by Jim Collins, who talk about getting
classic.
the right. Absolutely, we've been talking about getting the right people on the bus for a long time. The second is how do you make people both in the company know that all parties, both company and employee, are all acting in the right direction, that they are all acting with integrity. Right, so trust isn't a one-sided thing, one-sided dynamic, right? It's a very much a bank, as they say, where you both have to pay into it, and therefore making sure that both the employee and the company can be held to account and have safeguards and the ability to show that they are acting with integrity and with the level of ethical behavior one would expect is a really second important part of that pillar. And then the third thing that we started to really discover was that the way that you build trust or again in the workplace is to make sure that both parties know that the relationship is reciprocal and valued, that both parties are in it for the long run, and that there is something to be equally gained by both parties. That is, obviously an employer wants a team member to turn up and do their work as they said they do, and an employee wants wants a company that's going to treat them and reward them well when they do all of that, right? And that relationship and that investment where you sacrifice personal time for professional gain is ultimately recognized and rewarded, and as I say, valued. And there's lots of evidence that if you can build and leverage on these three levers, that the commercial productivity output and gains that can be seen are really significant. Triple-digit percentage significant in many cases, or a low trust company by about 186%. So it can be quite impactful for sure.
Oh, for sure. Especially now in this climate that you're talking about of distrust, right? I mean, you are steeped in it, I'll tell you. Now, let's take a short break to get an update from our advertiser, WorkHuman. We pour so much into our work, but too often it fails to meet our human needs. WorkHuman Live is HR and Leadership's award-winning conference for elevating the workplace to make it more purposeful, fulfilling, and guess what? More human. On May 12th through the 15th, minutes from Denver, join icons like Adam Grant, Cy Wakeman, and Trevor Noah to fearlessly tackle your biggest challenges at work, both individually and organizationally. Listeners can use the code WorkTrends20 at WorkHumanLive.com for 20% off your ticket to workplace transformation. That's WorkTrends20. Now, back to the podcast and our special guest, Veramark. So what does it take to create trust in the workplace, and what are the best ways to actually do this?
Nothing obviously happens overnight. So I think the first part is to recognize the framework of which trust is, to have the people actually then embody those areas. But thirdly is to really look around and see what kind of technology platforms you can use to really enable and facilitate this trusting relationship. And that's really what Veramark at the heart of it all about is, if we take the first pillar, for example, background screening is essentially, for our automated tech-driven platform, is a means for companies to ensure that they have the right people in the business. I think, companies often still overlook the potential use of technology in people tech or compliance tech to really drive some impactful results. That's at the heart of, ultimately what Veramark is as a core global pre-employment screening business.
Now, let's go global because you are literally working around the world, as do many of our friends here in the talent culture community. Daniel, what are some things international hiring companies should keep in mind when background screening from one country to the next?
We obviously live in a very global world now, and not only that, it is a cross-border hiring world, more so now than ever. I think there are three key things for companies to keep in mind. One is the international mobility of their people, and that's obviously not referring just to how they may move around within your own organization around the world, but where they are likely to have come from themselves. Personally, I've lived and studied in France, UK, over in the States, Spain as well. So, that's a lot of ground to cover if you're going to do an extensive background check on me. And that, I'm not alone in that, about 15% of our candidates will have an international, the people that we screen will have a dual nationality or dual country of origin or country of inhabitants during their screening process. I think the second key thing is around the integrity of data sources. Verimark has always been very focused on doing primary source of origin, making sure that we are getting the data from the absolute source, whether that's a government record or from the past employer itself. And a lot of the other players in the market might not be so officious in doing so. May look to cut corners, as is the case, or might not know exactly where to go. And again, that global compliance piece has been baked into our system from the get-go. And then finally, again, it's very important to be aware of the regulatory differences. We touched on it earlier, but the employment laws in France are not the same as the employment laws in the UK. The employment laws in New York are not the same as the employment laws in California. Having a clear eye on what you can and can't do, and making sure that you don't fall foul of any of those is really fundamental to ensuring that the company stays compliant and doesn't put itself at risk.
No question about it. Could you tell us more about your innovative product, Veripass, and how it's changing the way HR safely secures data and saves time and money?
Yeah, so the Veripass is a new concept that we brought to market. We think that actually background screening, as I mentioned, is a bit of an inconvenience for many companies, certainly is for the candidates. Why do you have to rescreen information that's already been checked, or your past employment history or your past academic history is cemented in time, right? It's unchanging. Therefore, why does it need to be checked? Well, the simple answer is that the incumbents or the old-fashioned legacy players in the background screening space make money every time you recheck it. We don't think that's fair. We much rather give that value back to the market. So we built a means in Veripass that turns the verified data into digital credentials. Those digital credentials get hashed and stamped in an immutable format, so that then we can give them back to the candidate in their own career passport, which we've labeled Veripass. So it essentially means that any candidate with a Veripass can share those credentials. If you want to therefore check someone's old employment history or old educational history, or those things that, like I say, are cemented in time, you no longer have to go through that inconvenience or delay or that cost of having to pay or wait for those data to be rechecked. And it's ultimately, as we see this sort of increasing desire for candidates to have to get more control over their own data and self-sovereignty of data, this is just another nice way for the employer to be able to give that gift of data back to their team.
Well, as they say, time flies when you're having fun. So we are on our last question today. So in closing, is there anything companies need to know about the technology they're using and how to get the most out of staying current with background checks?
Yeah, I think you can't underestimate the importance of from a technology that experience matters. That's both the experience to your own team, but also to the candidate experience. They are looking for a much stronger sense of a sort of consumer level quality experience, as well as making sure that their data is safe, that it is seamless, and that they have complete auditability of it all, and that it remains very GDPR or compliant with whatever the local laws of that country or region may be. But often we still hear clients and candidates really not placing enough emphasis on just how smooth and a streamlined experience it really should be. And that's certainly, amongst the other things, really top of the list when it comes to helping to pick a vendor.
We really uncovered a lot today about how to assess and rebuild trust in the new face of workplaces. Now, remember I mentioned earlier that there's a special gift for all our listeners? Well, here it is, so please listen carefully. Daniel, can you tell us about this offer from Verimark?
Yeah, we're delighted to partner with Work Trends. We're obviously big advocates of helping companies build and launch pre-employment screening programs and as they bring more trust into the workplace. So we're delighted that anyone who would like to get in touch with us will get their first 10 candidate checks free from Verimark. Doesn't matter where they are in the world, but each company will get 10 candidate checks for free and can easily claim it through the link that is distributed with this podcast.
Thanks so much for stopping by. Be sure to check out the free ebook from Verimark at tinyurl.com/VerimarkChecks for your gift. That's tinyurl.com/VerimarkChecks for your gift. Thanks for joining us for today's conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Just a reminder that you can hear all the Work Trends podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on the podcast page at talentculture.com. Be sure to subscribe so you can listen on the go and stay up to date on all the latest news you want to hear. I look forward to catching up with you next time. I hope today's information made you wiser, happier, more informed, and most importantly, thinking of how you can use it to improve the quality of your life.